Hey everyone. Tonight we're not starting on a battlefield of clashing swords. Instead, imagine a shuttered room in Edo, where the soft glow of a lantern reveals a samurai inhaling forbidden smoke. You've heard of Bushido, right honor, self-control, that iron code of discipline. But what if I told you that behind that legend, some warriors sought escape not just in bottles of sake and pipes of tobacco, but even in the secret haze of opium dens, hidden deep in Yoshiwara. This isn't the story of polished armor or noble duels. It's the story of cracked cups, trembling hands, and warriors who numbed their shame when peace robbed them of purpose. Picture a ronin staggering through the night, his katana at his hip, but his mind completely clouded by drink. That's the samurai history often doesn't want you to see. If you're ready for more unfiltered stories like this, hit that like button and subscribe. And in the comments, tell me what myth about samurai would you dare to question. Imagine stepping through a narrow, unlit alleyway in Edo. The air is heavy with the distant scent of incense and damp earth. Ahead, a muted flicker of light escapes from behind a closed sliding door, beckoning you into a world carefully concealed from the strict eyes of the Tokugawa shogunate. Gently, you push the door open. Inside, the air is thick and warm, clinging to your clothes, infused with an exotic, sweet aroma you can't quite place. This is no ordinary tea house. This is a hidden opium den, a sanctuary for those seeking a different kind of solace, a different kind of release. In the dim glow of paper lanterns, you see them not the upright, stoic warriors of legend, but figures draped in rich silk kimonos, their faces softened by the haze, their eyes half closed in a languid dream. Perhaps a samurai, his finely crafted sword laid carefully beside him, its polished scabbard reflecting the wavering light. He lies sprawled on a tatami mat, a long pipe held delicately in his hand. The smoke, curling slowly from his lips, is a silent defiance, an invisible act of rebellion against the very laws that shape his world. You feel the weight of this transgression, the quiet tension in the room. The shogunate had strictly forbidden this substance, terrified of a Japanese opium war akin to the one that ravaged distant China. They feared the erosion of spirit, the weakening of the nation, a silent invasion of the mind. Yet, despite formidable decrees and severe punishments, the forbidden smoke found its way into Edo. Chinese and Dutch traders, with their shrewd minds and clandestine networks, smuggled it in through bustling ports, a steady, insidious trickle that fed a growing, desperate need. And the eager recipients, often, they were samurai, men whose lives were meant to be models of honor and discipline, but who found themselves adrift in a world that no longer valued their martial skills. You witness the silent despair etched on a warrior's face. A man perhaps bankrupt, stripped of his stipend, his honors shattered like a broken ceramic bowl. He reaches for the pipe, seeking to mend the unmendable, to escape the crushing weight of his shame, the unbearable emptiness of a life without purpose. The smoke hangs heavy, a shroud over quiet conversations and whispered confessions. You see the glint of steel, a katana still at the hip of a warrior. But its purpose now seems only to hold up a crumbling identity, while his mind finds its release in ethereal clouds. This hidden world, so far removed from grand chronicles of heroic deeds, thrived in the shadows of Edo, an uncomfortable truth carefully erased from official records. You are here, a silent witness, feeling the irony, the profound human contradiction of a warrior seeking oblivion, not on the battlefield, but in the forbidden haze of a secret room, where the only battle is against the self, and the only weapon, a fragile pipe. As the memory of forbidden opium fades, you're now drawn to a different, more familiar aroma, the sharp, sweet tang of sake, mingling with savory broth and the gentle murmur of conversation. You find yourself in a bustling tavern, laughter and clinking ceramic cups creating a warm, comforting din. Here, sake isn't forbidden. It's woven into the very fabric of life, a legal indulgence, a constant companion. For the samurai, sake was once much more than a drink. It was a potent symbol, an integral part of Shinto rituals, a bridge to the divine. You might imagine them before a battle, holding a small wooden cup, a ceremonial sip meant to ignite their spirit, to infuse them with courage and fearsome resolve. The warmth of the rice wine, like a liquid fire, was believed to stir ancestral spirits, preparing them for the grim dance of combat. But now, in this long, unexpected era of peace, that ritual has lost its edge. Its sacred meaning has dissolved into something far more mundane, far more desperate. You watch as a ronin, a masterless samurai, sits hunched over a low table, his shoulders slumped, his gaze distant. The sake in his cup is no longer a spiritual aid, but a potent numbing agent, dulling the relentless ache of despair, the gnawing emptiness of a life without honor or duty. He drinks, and with each swallow, the harsh edges of reality soften. The mocking whispers of society grow faint, replaced by a fleeting, comforting haze. You feel the weight of his unspoken struggles, the quiet tragedy of a warrior no longer needed, his skills obsolete, his very existence questioned. The conviviality of the tavern, however, can quickly turn. You hear the rising pitch of voices, the sudden clash of ceramic as a cup is slammed down. In a society where martial prowess was paramount, and honor a fragile thing, binge drinking often escalated into volatile barrack brawls, fueled by pride and a potent mix of frustration and alcohol. You might even witness the chilling aftermath, a flash of steel, a pool of crimson on the tatami, a life extinguished not by the disciplined strike of a training sword, but by the reckless abandon of a drunken rage. It's a sobering thought, a stark contrast to the noble image of the samurai. Sake was cheap, readily available, and dangerously addictive. You observe the countless cups emptied, the flushed faces, the unsteady gaits. Alcoholism, like a silent plague, swept through the ranks of the samurai, an unacknowledged adversary. So many of these proud warriors, you realize, met their end not on the field of honor, their lives taken by an enemy's blade, but slowly, tragically, by the silent, corrosive grip of the bottle. You feel the slow, steady rhythm of the drinking, the quiet consumption, the gradual erosion of self. The scent of sake, once a symbol of courage, now carries a faint, melancholic undertone, a reminder of lost purpose and shattered lives, echoing softly in the bustling tavern. Walking away from the bustling tavern, the sounds of merriment and underlying sorrow fade. You carry with you that pervasive image of the samurai, etched into history books, celebrated in legend, pure, disciplined, an unwavering paragon of self-control. untouched by common vices. You've been taught to see him as a machine of honor, a living embodiment of Bushido, a warrior free from weakness. This, you now understand, is the myth. A beautiful, inspiring myth. A beacon of stoicism and unyielding will. But having glimpsed the hidden rooms of opium and the boisterous, often tragic, taverns of sake, you begin to see the cracks in that polished facade. The truth, you realize, is far more complex, far more human. Stimulants and escapes weren't an anomaly, but a persistent presence in the lives of these revered warriors. Sake, ever present. Tobacco, a burgeoning exotic vice. And in the deepest shadows, the forbidden allure of opium. You feel the weight of this contradiction, the silent dissonance between the ideal and the reality. Bushido, the very code that defined them, preached rigorous self-control, honor, and loyalty. It offered a moral compass, a path to enlightened living through disciplined action. Yet, within its tenets, you won't find a single line explicitly condemning drinking or smoking. A curious omission, leaving a wide, unspoken space for personal interpretation, for the quiet accommodations of human frailty. You picture a samurai, perhaps outwardly stern and unyielding, meticulously practicing his sword forms in the morning, reciting poetry in the afternoon. But then, as evening falls, he seeks solace in a different kind of ritual. Many warriors, you now understand, lived double lives. By day, they embodied the Bushido ideal, performing duties with meticulous precision, projecting an image of unwavering heroism. Their official records would sing praises of their bravery, wisdom, and moral fortitude. But in the quiet hours, away from the scrutinizing gaze of their lords and the public, they were often deeply, profoundly intoxicated. You feel the subtle shift in their demeanor, the loosening of rigid posture, the softening of a stern expression. The drug-free samurai, you realize, was largely a construct, a piece of propaganda meticulously crafted to uphold a societal ideal, to inspire awe and obedience, more a curated performance than an unfiltered reflection of human experience. Behind the valiant tales and shining armor, you sense a profound contradiction, a deep, often dark struggle. The gap between the revered ideal and the lived reality of the samurai was vast, a testament to the enduring human need for escape, for comfort, for oblivion, even in the most disciplined of lives. From the profound contradictions of Bushido, our journey now turns to a different, more social vice, one that arrived on Japan's distant horizons with the first Portuguese traders in the late 16th century. Imagine the bustling docks, foreign ships arriving with strange goods and stranger customs. Among these novelties, you might have seen it a curious dried leaf, promising a novel sensation. At first, tobacco was a rare luxury, an exotic curiosity reserved for the wealthy and powerful. Picture a high-ranking samurai, perhaps a daimyo of considerable influence, leisurely drawing on an exquisitely crafted pipe, its iron stem intricately carved, its bowl gleaming softly. This was a statement of status, a display of access to the newest trends from distant lands, a mark of refined taste. But, as with all fascinating novelties, the habit quickly spread. You observe it moving through the layers of Edo society, from the inner circles of the shogunate to the bustling merchant class, and even among the common people. The simple act of smoking became ingrained, a shared ritual, a quiet moment of contemplation or convivial exchange. You can almost smell the sweet, earthy aroma of burning tobacco wafting through the narrow streets, mingling with the everyday scents of cooking fires and damp wood. Smoking culture found a natural home in Edo's vibrant social hubs. You see it in the hushed intimacy of tea houses, where guests would share pipes over delicate cups of green tea, their conversations punctuated by soft exhalations of smoke. And perhaps more vividly, you find it thriving in the boisterous, sensual atmosphere of the brothels and pleasure quarters, where the air was perpetually hazy with tobacco, adding to the allure and mystique. You might notice courtesans, with their elaborate hairstyles and painted faces, holding elegant pipes, their slender fingers a stark contrast to the robust iron of the kizaru. Artists of the ukiyo-e movement, those chroniclers of the floating world, captured this pervasive habit with remarkable detail. You can almost see their prints coming to life scenes of everyday Edo, where figures are perpetually surrounded by a gentle, ethereal haze. Samurai, merchants, courtesans, and commoners all appear, often with a pipe in hand, the smoke becoming an integral, almost artistic, backdrop to their lives. These vibrant prints immortalize tobacco not merely as a habit, but as a defining feature of the era, a ubiquitous element of its cultural tapestry. Yet, beneath this veneer of cultural acceptance, the quiet truth lingered. What was praised as a sophisticated practice, a part of Edo's unique charm, was, in essence, an addiction. You recognize the familiar patterns, the constant need, the quiet craving, the almost unconscious reach for the pipe. The exotic vice had become an ingrained dependency, binding people across all classes in its subtle, comforting grip. You feel the gentle rhythm of the puffs, the quiet satisfaction it brought, but also the subtle tightening of an invisible chain, a common thread that linked the powerful daimyo with the struggling street vendor, all under the spell of the fragrant, curling smoke. Having explored the social and illicit intoxicants, you now turn to a more ancient, revered aspect of Japan's relationship with natural substances, the world of herbal remedies and traditional medicine. Step into a quiet, sun-dappled courtyard, perhaps belonging to a healer or a temple, where the air is redolent with the earthy, complex scents of drying plants for centuries. Traditional Japan utilized a profound knowledge of the land's bounty for healing. You might see bundles of hemp or asa, its fibers used for textiles and spiritual purification. But its leaves also recognized for medicinal properties. Poppies, with their vibrant colors, were cultivated not just for beauty, but for the potent properties held within their delicate forms. And ginseng, a root revered for its revitalizing powers, was a cornerstone of longevity and health. In a world shaped by constant conflict and demanding duties, samurai were no strangers to physical pain and profound stress. Envision a warrior, his body aching from battle wounds, a deep cut across his arm, or his spirit wearied by the relentless pressures of loyalty and service. He seeks solace, not in the bottle or the pipe, but in the wisdom of ancient remedies. He would turn to a skilled herbalist, perhaps a monk with knowledge passed down through generations, who understood the delicate balance of nature's pharmacy. You feel the cool touch of poultices, the bitter taste of infusions, the slow, gentle easing of discomfort. Among these herbal allies, cannabis held a significant place. Imagine a samurai suffering from chronic pain, perhaps a lingering injury from a training accident, or battling the persistent insomnia that often accompanies a life of constant vigilance and internal turmoil. He might be prescribed cannabis to ease his physical discomfort, to lull his restless mind into a peaceful sleep, or to quell the anxieties that gnawed at his spirit in the quiet hours of the night. You sense the delicate line here, the intention of healing, of restoring balance, of offering a gentle respite from suffering. Furthermore, you discover a fascinating intersection between healing and spirituality. Certain Shugendo practitioners and mountain Buddhist ascetics, those who sought enlightenment through rigorous spiritual and physical disciplines, sometimes incorporated psychoactive herbs into their rituals. Picture them, deep in the mountains, surrounded by ancient trees and the murmur of streams, consuming these plants to aid meditation, to induce visions, to facilitate a deeper connection with the divine or the natural world. These substances blurred the lines between mundane treatment and mystical transcendence, between a physical cure and a spiritual journey. Yet, even in this sacred context, you sense the subtle danger, the quiet whisper of human vulnerability. The very substances used for healing and spiritual exploration, capable of offering profound relief, held the potential for something more insidious. You feel that delicate balance, the awareness that one step, just one quiet shift in intention or circumstance, could transform a beneficial treatment into a relentless dependency. The path from pain relief to a deeper, more consuming need was often a very short one, a silent testament to the fragile nature of both body and spirit. As you reflect on the samurai's relationship with various substances, you begin to grasp the profound societal shift that underpinned many of these struggles, the advent of the Edo period's long, unprecedented peace. You step out of the quiet, herb-scented chamber and into a different kind of quiet. The stillness of an era without major wars. For many samurai, this stillness became a heavy, suffocating blanket. For generations, their very identity, their purpose, their honor, had been forged on the battlefield, honed by the imminent threat of conflict. Now, with the nation at peace, their raison d'etre, their warrior role, began to subtly erode. You feel the vast emptiness, the unsettling quiet where the clang of swords and the roar of battle once resonated. Imagine a samurai, his life meticulously prepared for warfare, his skills in archery, swordsmanship, and strategy perfected over years of rigorous training. Suddenly, there is no war. His formidable talents, once vital for survival and glory, now seem superfluous, almost a burden. You sense the feeling of being unmoored, like a great ship built for vast oceans, now confined to a small, placid lake. Many stipends, the fixed allowances granted by their lords, began to shrink, often drastically. You witness the silent anxiety, the quiet shame, as noble warriors found themselves teetering on the brink of poverty, struggling to maintain their household and their dignity in a rapidly changing economy that valued merchants and artisans more than martial prowess. Even more tragically, you encounter the ronin, the masterless samurai. Their lords might have fallen, or their domains disbanded, leaving them adrift, without a master to serve, without a fixed income, without a place in the rigid social structure. You see them, often with a tattered straw hat pulled low, their once proud bearing now stooped by humiliation. Society, which once revered them, now often mocked them, or simply ignored them, viewing them as relics of a bygone era, burdens on a peaceful landscape. You feel the crushing weight of their shame, the relentless sting of societal scorn, the profound loss of identity. This immense stress, this gnawing humiliation, proved to be an unbearable burden for many. You watch as these once proud warriors, stripped of purpose and honor, turned increasingly to the potent solace of drink and drugs. It was an escape, a desperate attempt to quiet the incessant whispers of failure and worthlessness. Bushido, with its unwavering call for restraint, for stoicism in the face of adversity, found itself in stark opposition to the crushing reality of their lives. The code demanded resilience, but their human spirit craved escape. Intoxication became a bitter, yet effective, anesthesia. You sense the quiet relief, the temporary cessation of pain, as the alcohol or the smoke dulled the sharp edges of lost honor, numbing the persistent ache of a life unfulfilled. It was a silent, personal war, fought within the confines of their own minds, with bottles and pipes serving as their only, often fleeting, weapons against an invisible enemy of despair. You feel the quiet desperation, the deep human need to simply not feel, for a little while, the harshness of a peace that had paradoxically brought them ruin. Having journeyed through the pressures of peace, you now stand at a profound crossroads, observing the clash between the lofty ideals of Bushido and the pervasive reality of intoxication. Bushido, the way of the warrior, was a magnificent tapestry woven from threads of honor, loyalty, courage, and, above all, rigorous self-discipline. You envision its precepts, the unwavering gaze, the controlled movements, the inner strength that allowed a samurai to face death with serenity. It was a code designed to elevate the human spirit, to refine the warrior into an almost spiritual being. Yet, as you delve deeper into the daily lives of these men, a curious disconnect emerges. In theory, Bushido praised impeccable conduct, a clear mind, and steadfast self-control. In practice, however, drunkenness was not explicitly condemned as a breach of honor, nor was smoking seen as a cardinal sin. You feel the tension of this unspoken compromise, the wide chasm between the ideal and the permissible. A samurai might stand tall, his presence radiating an aura of unwavering virtue, quoting profound moral philosophy, speaking of duty and integrity with eloquent conviction. But moments later, you might witness him calmly drawing on an ornate kisaru pipe, a cloud of tobacco smoke curling around his words, or perhaps sipping sake, his composure gradually softening with each cup. This unspoken allowance, this quiet tolerance, revealed a significant gap within Bushido itself, a space between its grand theoretical framework and the messy, flawed reality of human existence. It highlighted the human element, the undeniable fact that even those who aspired to the highest ideals were still flesh and blood, susceptible to the same cravings and weaknesses as anyone else. You understand that the code provided a blueprint for the perfect warrior, but it struggled to fully account for the imperfect man. You observe the samurai, always maintaining his proud mask, the stoic expression that concealed his inner world. But behind that carefully constructed facade, beneath the polished armor and the serene demeanor, you recognize a flawed human being, wrestling with the same desires, the same stresses, the same need for escape as any other person in Edo. The katana, a symbol of honor and martial prowess, stood silent sentinel at his hip. But behind its gleaming blade, you now perceive another shadow, a more insidious one, the shadow of addiction, quiet and persistent, weaving itself into the very fabric of his being. You feel the profound irony, the quiet tragedy of this duality. The warrior who dedicated his life to self-mastery often found himself enslaved by the very substances he consumed. A silent battle waged not with an enemy across the field, but within the confines of his own spirit. The code that promised enlightenment and strength inadvertently left room for a darkness to take root. A human weakness that transformed the revered symbol into a deeply relatable, yet tragically compromised, mortal. From the internal conflict of Bushido, you are now drawn into the vibrant, pulsating heart of Edo's hidden desires, the Yoshiwara red light district. Step through the main gate, and the transformation is immediate and dazzling. The air here hums with a different energy, a heady mix of music, laughter, and the rich, complex sense of perfume, sake, and tobacco. This is Edo's forbidden paradise, a world cloistered away from the rigid strictures of everyday life, a place where rules bend and desires are openly indulged. You are immersed in a kaleidoscope of glowing lanterns, shimmering silks, and the soft strumming of shamisen. Here, in this vibrant, sequestered world, you see samurai in a completely new light. Stripped of their formal duties, often shedding their outer layers of warrior identity, they mingle freely with courtesans of captivating beauty and wit. They drink deeply, their cups refilled again and again, their laughter growing louder, their inhibitions steadily dissolving. You hear the clinking of ceramic, the whispers exchanged, the light-hearted banter that fills the air. And, just as tobacco had become a social ritual, so too did other, more potent substances find a place within these walls. You might notice the subtle, knowing glance between a samurai and a courtesan, leading to a hidden room where the sweet, heavy scent of opium lingers. The brothels of Yoshiwara were far more than just houses of pleasure. They doubled as bustling taverns, where sake flowed like water, and, in their more secluded corners, they served as clandestine drug dens. You witnessed the convergence of pleasure and escape, a potent cocktail of indulgence that drew men from all walks of life, especially those seeking oblivion from the pressures of their daily existence. As the night deepens, the boundaries blur. Days bleed into nights, filled with a relentless mix of sensual delights, the numbing haze of drugs, and, occasionally, the volatile eruption of passion or violence. You might hear a sudden, sharp argument, quickly hushed, or glimpse a flash of anger in eyes dulled by drink. For the commoners of Edo, those who lived outside the gates of Yoshiwara, this spectacle of their noble warriors indulging in such excess was a stark, often resented, display of hypocrisy. You feel the undercurrent of resentment, the silent judgment of those who upheld strict moral codes while their supposed exemplars flagrantly disregarded them. How could those sworn to honor and discipline descend into such depths of hedonism? Yoshiwara, with its tantalizing allure and its open secrets, became the undeniable heart of the samurai on drugs narrative, a vibrant, living testament to the human flaws beneath the warrior's facade. You linger, observing the dance of light and shadow, the ebb and flow of pleasure and despair. The air itself feels thick with unspoken stories, with the quiet unraveling of reputations and the fleeting moments of escape. Yoshiwara, in its dazzling complexity, reveals a side of samurai life that history often preferred to forget, a potent reminder that even the most disciplined of warriors were, at their core, intensely human, seeking solace in the seductive embrace of Edo's floating world. As the vibrant, yet unsettling, images of Yoshiwara fade, you carry with you a deeper understanding of the human cost of these indulgences. Now, you hear the echoes of specific incidents, whispers of tales that permeated Edo society, recounting the unfortunate consequences of samurai excess. These aren't just abstract concepts. They are concrete stories illustrating the insidious grip of addiction and the shattering of the warrior's ideal. You might hear a heated argument, fueled by too much sake, escalating rapidly into a drunken insult, a perceived slight to honor demanding satisfaction, the clatter of ceramic cups, the sudden drawing of swords, and then a swift, tragic duel in a dark alley. A life ended, not for a grand cause, but for the reckless abandon born of intoxication. You feel the chilling finality, the senselessness of such an end, so far removed from the noble clashes of legend. Then there are the hushed accounts of samurai arrested, their faces grim with shame, caught in the act of consuming forbidden opium despite the shogunate's strict bans. Imagine the sudden raid, the harsh light of a lantern cutting through the smoke-filled room, the cold steel of the guards' spears. These arrests, often hushed up to preserve family honor, nevertheless sent ripples of fear and humiliation through their clans. It was a public acknowledgement of a private failing, a chink in the armor of their revered status. Ukiyo-e prints, those vivid windows into Edo life, captured these moments with an unflinching eye. You can almost see them playful, yet revealing, images of samurai staggering through the night, their usually dignified countenances twisted into exaggerated laughs or expressions of drunken disorientation. They're depicted with kimonos askew, swords carelessly dragging, their posture a world away from the rigid discipline expected of them. These prints, meant to entertain, also subtly served as a visual commentary on the often hypocritical reality of the ruling class, showing them as all too human and often all too flawed. Edo officials, tasked with maintaining order and upholding morality, frequently voiced their frustration. You might hear their exasperated complaints. Samurai forget ethics when drunk, or their duties are neglected, their honor tarnished by the bottle and the pipe. Their words reflect a genuine concern for the erosion of the warrior class's moral fiber. Recognizing the threat posed by widespread indulgence, the very pillars of society, the samurai, seem to be crumbling from within. Indeed, entire clans, once powerful and respected, gradually declined. You observe the slow, agonizing descent as heirs, meant to uphold their family's legacy, instead drowned themselves in vice. Their stipends dwindled, their lands were mismanaged, and their reputations tarnished, leaving a trail of ruined families and fading glory. Addiction, like a silent, pervasive acid, corroded not only individual reputations, but also the very legacies they were sworn to protect and enhance. You feel the weight of these quiet tragedies, the personal stories that underscore the often unseen human cost of a society struggling to reconcile its ideals with its inherent flaws. As your journey through the hidden corners of Edo concludes, you are left with a quiet, profound understanding that transcends the romanticized legends. History, in its grand narratives, often sanctifies the samurai, presenting them as almost mythical machines of honor, flawlessly executing the tenets of Bushido. You've seen the gleaming armor, read the heroic tales, and perhaps, for a time, believed in that untarnished ideal. But now, having witnessed the dim, smoke-filled rooms, the desperate solace sought in sake, the quiet pull of tobacco, and the numbing haze of opium, you realize a deeper, more human truth. In reality, these warriors, so revered and celebrated, bore the same wounds, the same stresses, and the same fundamental weaknesses as any other human being. You sense the vulnerability beneath the rigid exterior, the quiet anxieties that gnawed at their spirits. Their shadows, the shadows of sake, tobacco, and opium followed the sword as relentlessly as their own physical forms, intertwining with their very being. This reality, far from diminishing their historical significance, humanizes them in a way that legend never could. You begin to see them not merely as symbols of a glorious past, but as complex individuals, powerful warriors. Yes, but also flawed mortals navigating the treacherous waters of a changing world. They were not just the embodiment of an ideal, they were also victims of their age, caught between the echoes of a martial past and the quiet, unsettling demands of a long peace. They grappled with a world that had seemingly outgrown their primary purpose, leaving them to find new, often self-destructive, ways to cope. This story reveals a darker, yet ultimately truer, portrait of the samurai. It's a nuanced tapestry where honor and intoxication are not mutually exclusive, but profoundly intertwined. You feel the weight of this understanding, the quiet acceptance of a truth that is both sobering and deeply empathetic. The samurai, like all of us, sought escape, comfort, and meaning in a challenging world. And perhaps, in recognizing their vulnerabilities, their struggles, and their very human flaws, we come to understand not just them, but a little more about the enduring, complex nature of humanity itself. You feel the gentle breath of history, whispering not of perfection, but of a quiet, enduring, and ultimately very human resilience. Imagine, if you will, the gentle dawn breaking over the city of Edo, the capital of old Japan. You are there, a silent observer in a world where every sunrise brought with it the quiet, steady promise of a single, foundational food rice. It wasn't merely a dish. It was the very pulse of daily life, the unspoken rhythm around which the entire society revolved. For the average person living during the samurai period, especially within the bustling heart of Edo, rice wasn't just part of their diet, it was their diet. You would consume, on average, a staggering 5 cups of it each day. To put that in perspective, that's approximately 26.5 ounces of rice, a weighty amount that speaks volumes about the physical demands and the simple, yet profound, economics of the era. In the early days, you might have been accustomed to the heartier, more rustic brown rice, its natural bran lending a slightly nutty flavor and a chewier texture. But as the Edo period progressed, a subtle yet significant shift occurred. White rice, refined and polished, began to replace its earthier counterpart. It wasn't just a change in preference, it became a symbol, a quiet declaration of status, and even a mark of what was considered cool or fashionable in the evolving culture. To present a bowl of gleaming white rice was to display a certain refinement, a subtle affluence that spoke louder than words. You'd notice this distinction in the more prosperous households, a testament to the meticulous labor involved in its preparation. The preparation itself was an art of efficiency, driven by the practicalities of the age. You'd observe that this colossal daily portion of rice was cooked only once. In the quiet hours of the morning, picture the kitchen, a space filled with the subtle scent of wood smoke and the gentle crackle of embers within the Kamado furnaces. These traditional stoves, fueled by precious wood or charcoal, were designed for maximum efficiency. Cooking just once meant conserving that valuable fuel, a resource that dictated much of the daily routine. So, as the first light filtered through the paper screens, the task of preparing the day's rice, enough for an entire household, would commence, filling the air with that distinct, comforting aroma of freshly steamed grain. If you were to glimpse old drawings or woodblock prints from this era, your eyes would immediately be drawn to the depictions of these rice portions. They weren't just bowls. They were veritable mountains of white, glistening grains, piled high and sculpted with an almost architectural precision. These visual records are not artistic exaggerations. They are accurate reflections of the sheer volume of rice that was expected to be consumed. You might feel a sense of awe, perhaps even a touch of bewilderment, at the sight of such an abundant, singular focus on this one staple. It was a commitment, a daily pledge to the power of the grain. Once cooked, this magnificent bounty of rice wouldn't be left to cool and harden. Oh, no. It was treated with the reverence it deserved. You would see it carefully transferred from the kamado pot into specialized wooden containers known as ohitsu. These elegant, lidded vessels, crafted from cypress or cedar, weren't just storage. They were designed with an innate understanding of food preservation. Their natural properties allowed the rice to breathe, preventing it from becoming soggy while simultaneously keeping it wonderfully warm and fluffy throughout the entire day. So, even hours after its morning preparation, when you reached for your next meal, you would find the rice still yielding, still inviting, a testament to the ingenuity and respect for sustenance that permeated Edo, Japan. It was a quiet promise of warmth and comfort, sustained from dawn until dusk, cradled in the heart of wood. As the final embers of pre-dawn darkness gave way to the soft, pearly light of morning, you would stir from your slumber, knowing that the day in a samurai household began early, often long before the sun had fully cleared the eastern horizon. Quiet preparations for the first meal would already be underway, a silent testament to the disciplined rhythm of life. By 7 o'clock in the morning, a time that might feel remarkably early to your modern sensibilities, breakfast would be ready, laid out with precise, almost ritualistic care. This wasn't a leisurely, drawn-out affair. It was a foundational act, setting the stage for the day's obligations and exertions. The very essence of the samurai's table was encapsulated in a simple, yet profound, culinary philosophy. One soup, one side dish. This rule wasn't about austerity as much as it was about balance and a clear, unpretentious focus on staple ingredients. When you sat down, perhaps on a soft cushion placed upon cool, woven tatami mats, you'd find your individual meal presented on a personal ozen tray. This thoughtful presentation underscored a sense of personal space and respect, even within the communal setting of the morning meal. Your typical breakfast plate would be a study in understated harmony. At its center, undoubtedly, would be that magnificent mountain of fluffy, white rice, its steam gently rising, carrying a faint, sweet aroma that promised warmth and energy. Alongside it, a bowl of steaming miso soup would await, its savory depths offering a comforting counterpoint. And then, the one side dish, a small, artfully arranged selection of pickled vegetables. These vibrant condiments, known as tsukemono, weren't merely garnishes. They were essential components, offering a burst of flavor, a refreshing crunch, and a vital source of nutrients in a diet dominated by grain. The variety of these pickles was surprisingly diverse, each offering its own distinct character. You might encounter takuan, the bright yellow, thinly sliced daikon radish, pickled in rice bran, offering a satisfying crispness and a subtly tangy taste. Or perhaps the deep red, wrinkled plums known as umeboshi. Their intensely sour and salty flavor, a powerful palate cleanser. You might also find rakyu, small, pearl-like scallions pickled in a sweetened vinegar, providing a pungent, aromatic kick. And for a deeper, more savory note, there would be miso pickles, vegetables preserved in miso paste, infusing them with an earthy, umami richness. Each tiny portion was a carefully crafted flavor bomb, designed to awaken the senses and complement the more neutral foundation of rice. As you partook in this meal, seated humbly on your tatami mat, the sheer generosity of the portions would become immediately apparent. Even for the host, a person of considerable appetite and a lifetime of training and endurance. The quantity of rice was often described in ways that would surprise you. It wasn't uncommon for individuals to feel so utterly full, so completely satiated by the time they had finished their enormous serving of rice, that the experience bordered on discomfort, a sense of being stretched to the very limits of fullness. The morning meal wasn't just about breaking the fast. It was about laying down a formidable foundation, a substantial deposit of energy expected to fuel the body and mind for the demanding hours ahead. You would understand, in that moment, the true meaning of a substantial breakfast, a quiet marvel of caloric density, prepared to sustain the warrior's path. Turning your attention to the miso soup, a constant companion on the Edo-period table, you might expect a certain familiarity, a comforting consistency. Indeed, the foundational dashi, the delicate broth that forms the soul of the soup, was prepared much as it is today, a careful infusion of kombu, a dried kelp imparting a subtle, oceanic sweetness, and katsuobushi, thinly shaved flakes of dried, smoked bonito fish, which contribute a deep, savory umami. This timeless base provides a gentle warmth, a soothing foundation that cradles the other ingredients. However, within this familiar framework, you would occasionally encounter a surprising and somewhat audacious ingredient. Natto. For your modern palate, the idea of natto in miso soup might sound distinctly bizarre, perhaps even a culinary transgression. Today, natto is typically enjoyed as a standalone dish, often mixed with soy sauce and mustard, served over rice. But in Edo, Japan, particularly in some regions, it was a perfectly common, even expected, addition to the morning soup. You'd discover that this wasn't the exact same natto you might encounter in contemporary Japanese cuisine. The Edo version was often finely chopped, making its signature stickiness even more pronounced, a textural experience integral to its role in the soup. As your chopsticks navigated the steaming broth, you'd encounter cubes of soft, white tofu, its delicate texture a gentle contrast to the savory liquid. You might also find slices of daikon radish, simmered until tender, absorbing the rich flavors of the dashi and miso. But then, there would be the natto. Natto, those fermented soybeans, their distinct, pungent aroma mingling with the more earthy notes of the miso. When combined with the hot soup, their sliminess, a characteristic that often divides palates, would intensify. You might approach it with a slight hesitation, a flicker of curiosity mixed with apprehension. Yet, as you brought the spoon to your lips, the experience would transcend mere description. The soup, undeniably, had a certain slimy quality, an unusual mouthfeel unlike anything you might be accustomed to. But beneath that initial tactile surprise, a deeper, more complex flavor would unfold. The richness of the miso, the subtle sweetness of the daikon, the delicate neutrality of the tofu, and then the distinct, fermented tang of the natto, all coalescing into a surprisingly harmonious whole. It was a taste that spoke of tradition, of resourcefulness, and of a palate uniquely attuned to the textures and flavors available in that distant era. You might find yourself unexpectedly enjoying it, a testament to the fact that culinary boundaries are often fluid, shaped by time and circumstance. And then, as the last savory drops of the soup were consumed, came a final, practical gesture that highlighted the deep-seated respect for every single grain of rice. It was considered an absolute waste, almost an affront, to leave even a few stray grains clinging to the bottom of your rice bowl. So, with a quiet grace, you would take your teacup or a small pitcher of water and pour it into your now empty miso soup bowl. Then, using your chopsticks, you would gently swirl the water, rinsing any lingering bits of rice or soup from the sides, and drink it down. This simple act, performed without a second thought, was a powerful statement nothing was to be squandered. Every calorie, every morsel, was valued. It was a lesson in frugality and mindfulness, a quiet echo of the deep connection between food and survival that defined life in Edo, Japan, a lesson that resonated long after the last drop was savored. The breakfast rice portion wasn't merely a meal. It was an undertaking, a test of will and capacity that began each day. You'd find that consuming such a colossal amount of food, particularly that towering mountain of rice, was no quick affair. It often took well over an hour, a slow, deliberate process that demanded your full attention, your chewing muscles working tirelessly against the seemingly endless supply of grains. This extended eating time wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. Given the sheer volume you were expected to consume, the quiet of the morning would be punctuated by the steady rhythm of your chopsticks, the soft sounds of eating, and the gentle sigh of a stomach slowly, inevitably, reaching its limits. In Edo, Japan, the concept of casual snacking, as you understand it today, was largely absent. There were no convenience stores, no quick bites to grab between meals. The substantial breakfast you had just endured was designed to be a durable fuel source, a massive caloric deposit intended to last you for the better part of the day. Every grain was a tiny engine, powering you through the physical demands of your daily life. Carbohydrates, primarily from that ubiquitous rice, were the undisputed champions of energy for a society built on hard physical labor, long hours of walking, and the constant exertion of daily tasks. This dense, carb-rich diet was perfectly tailored. You would feel the slow burn of that energy, a steady foundation beneath your efforts as you went about your responsibilities. Even as fatigue began to set in, as your body ached from a day of strenuous activity, the cultural imperative surrounding rice remained unwavering. To waste even a few grains, to leave food uneaten in your bowl, was considered deeply shameful. It wasn't just about disrespecting the food itself. It was an affront to the labor that produced it, to the community that sustained it, and to the very spirit of endurance that defined the era. You would push through that feeling of exhaustion, that sense of overwhelming fullness, driven by a silent, internal mandate. Eating, therefore, transcended the simple act of nourishment. It became a subtle yet profound physical battle, a quiet contest between the individual and the bowl. You would feel the weight of expectation, the cultural pressure to finish what was given. Each mouthful was a deliberate act, a step in a daily endurance test. It was a testament to mental fortitude as much as physical capacity. The act of eating became a microcosm of life itself in Edo, Japan, reflecting the unyielding demands placed upon individuals, particularly the samurai, who embodied the ideal of unwavering discipline. You might even hear, or perhaps imagine, the soft, encouraging whispers of Ganbare samurai, persevere, samurai, a phrase imbued with the spirit of enduring hardship. This wasn't merely encouragement to finish a meal. It was a broader philosophical statement, a reminder to approach every challenge, even the seemingly mundane act of consuming food, with the same stoicism and resolve one would bring to a battlefield. The meal was a daily training ground, forging not just strong bodies, but indomitable spirits. The rice wasn't just fuel for the body, it was a nutrient for the soul, shaping the identity of those who lived within the Edo period, a silent promise of strength and unwavering dedication. As the sun reached its zenith, casting shorter shadows across the tranquil lanes of Edo, the midday meal would arrive, a more subdued affair compared to the grand, energy-laden breakfast. You'd find that lunch was typically a simpler, more pragmatic pause in the day's activities. The centerpiece remained, of course, the ever-present rice. But by this time, it would be cold. Remember, the rice was cooked only once, in the cool hours of the morning, to conserve precious fuel. So, you would partake in the same voluminous white grains, now at room temperature, perhaps offering a slightly firmer texture, a different tactile experience from its morning warmth. Accompanying the cold rice, you would likely find a bowl of miso soup, often reheated to offer a comforting warmth that cut through the midday coolness. The simple act of warming the soup, perhaps over a small charcoal brazier, provided a familiar aroma and a moment of gentle solace. While the core of the meal remained constant, the massive portion of rice and the ubiquitous miso soup, the flexibility of Edo life, particularly in the bustling city, allowed for certain augmentations. For those who desired or could afford a little something extra, a greater variety of side dishes could be purchased. Imagine yourself strolling through a lively street, the air filled with the gentle hum of conversations and the subtle scents of various foods. You might encounter small stalls or vendors offering freshly grilled fish, its smoky aroma mingling with the salty tang of the sea. Or perhaps seasonal vegetables, simply prepared, offering a fresh burst of color and flavor. And of course, the ever-popular pickled plums. Umeboshi, their intense sourness a perfect foil to the plain rice, always readily available. These additional items provided a welcome culinary diversion, a momentary indulgence that broke the routine of the core meal. These city stalls, with their convenient offerings, made the Edo diet remarkably flexible, especially for the working classes and the myriad travelers passing through. You would observe laborers pausing for a quick, fortifying bite, or a weary traveler finding a moment of comfort in a purchased side dish. This adaptability reflected a fascinating balance inherent in Edo society, a deep-seated frugality, born from necessity and a respect for resources. coexisting with an emerging convenience, catering to the demands of a vibrant, growing urban population. It was a subtle testament to a society learning to adapt, to provide for its people within its established traditions. Yet, despite any additional purchased accompaniments, the meal, without fail, remained centered around that familiar, imposing mountain of rice. It was the unwavering constant, the steadfast anchor of every plate. The side dishes were merely pleasant diversions, supporting actors in a grand culinary drama where rice always played the starring role. You would finish your midday meal, perhaps with a slight sigh of contentment, or, more likely, a familiar feeling of profound fullness, ready to resume your duties, fueled once more by the unwavering strength of the grain, until the quiet of evening would descend. In the vibrant, sometimes surprising culture of Edo, Japan, even the humble side dishes were elevated to a realm of playful, yet serious, competition, much like the revered sumo wrestlers of the era. You'd discover that Edo people, with their keen sense of order and appreciation for excellence, created what they called side dish banzuke. Just as formidable sumo champions were ranked on a formal list, reflecting their skill and popularity, so too were the culinary accompaniments. These unofficial, yet widely recognized, lists celebrated the favorite dishes of the period, offering a fascinating glimpse into the collective palate of a bygone age. It was a charming expression of their everyday culture, a subtle way of discussing and appreciating the nuanced flavors that brought joy to their otherwise disciplined meals. Imagine yourself poring over one of these conceptual banzuke, perhaps scribbled on a piece of paper, or simply discussed with animated gestures among friends. At the very pinnacle of these culinary rankings, you would consistently find certain dishes lauded for their taste, texture, and perhaps their comforting familiarity. Among the top contenders was happai dufu, a delightful preparation of tofu, often simmered or braised with a delicate balance of sake and soy sauce, allowing the bean curd to absorb rich, savory liquids, becoming incredibly flavorful and tender. It was a dish that spoke of subtlety and refinement, a gentle yet satisfying complement to the rice. Another esteemed favorite was kobuage, a simple yet elegant dish of fried tofu. Picture golden brown cubes, crisply fried on the outside, yielding to a soft, creamy interior. This textural contrast, combined with its humble origins, made it a beloved choice, perhaps reminding you of the simple pleasures that often bring the most comfort. And then there was kinpira gobu, a dish whose very name evokes a sense of earthy goodness and enduring tradition. This was a stir-fry, a vibrant medley of burdock root and carrots, thinly julienned and cooked with a fragrant blend of sesame oil, soy sauce, and mirin, a sweet rice wine. The burdock root, with its unique, deep, slightly bitter flavor and satisfying crunch, combined with the sweetness of the carrots, created a dish that was both savory and subtly sweet, a true masterpiece of everyday cooking. The enduring popularity of kinpira gobu is a testament to its timeless appeal. You'd find that it didn't just remain a passing fad. It became a lasting classic, a staple that has gracefully traversed the centuries. Even today, you can find kinpira gobu on tables across Japan, a quiet, delicious echo of the Edo period. Its combination of robust flavors and satisfying textures ensured its place in the culinary heart of the nation. Yet, even with these delightful and highly ranked side dishes, the cold rice and the reheated miso soup often struggled to truly shine in comparison. You would feel their presence. Certainly, the vast bulk of the rice, the gentle warmth of the soup, but against the vibrant, complex flavors of a well-prepared kinpira gobu, or the delicate savoriness of happy-du-fu. They could sometimes taste a little dull, a little unassuming. They were the canvas upon which these more vibrant colors were painted, the steady beat against which these culinary melodies played. It was a subtle reminder that while rice was the foundation, it was the ingenuity of these side dishes that truly brought moments of joy and flavor to the Edo table. A silent celebration of culinary artistry in a world of disciplined simplicity. The midday meal, much like its morning predecessor, wasn't merely a brief interlude. It was an extended commitment, a quiet battle of sustenance. You would observe, as the host once again grappled with his considerable lunch portion of rice, the same familiar struggle unfolding. The sheer volume of the grain, even when cold, presented a formidable challenge. It was a testament to a different era, a time when stomachs were seemingly built for grander capacities than those of your modern sensibilities. You would reflect on how, for the Edo Japanese, each meal wasn't just about satisfying hunger, but about fulfilling a daily quota of energy. Finishing a meal, particularly the midday one, could often stretch on for nearly an hour. Imagine the quiet persistence required, the steady, rhythmic movement of chopsticks, the deliberate chewing, as you methodically worked your way through the imposing mound of rice. It wasn't a rushed affair, but a testament to a life lived at a different pace, where the act of eating was given its due time and attention. There was no hurried grabbing of a sandwich, no quick desk lunch. This was a dedicated period, a necessary pause for deep replenishment. Comparing the stomachs of Edo individuals to those of today, you might arrive at a fascinating conclusion. Their digestive systems seemed endlessly stronger, more resilient. Perhaps it was a lifetime of consuming such enormous quantities of rice, a physical adaptation honed over generations. You would ponder the sheer elasticity required, the capacity to process and derive sustenance from a diet so overwhelmingly dominated by a single carbohydrate. It spoke to a physiology shaped by necessity, a body finely tuned to its environment and the available resources. Each bite, therefore a cannabis, became more than just an act of consumption. It felt like a form of training. It was a constant exercise in discipline, a daily reinforcement of resilience. This wasn't dining in the leisurely, indulgent sense that you might associate with modern meals. This was fuel intake, a serious business approached with a warrior's resolve. You would sense the profound difference in attitude, the way food was viewed as an essential component of strength and readiness, rather than merely a source of pleasure or fleeting satisfaction. Rice, in this context, was far more than just food. It was the very essence of fuel, powering bodies through rigorous days of labor, walking, and the demanding responsibilities of samurai life. But it was also intrinsically linked to identity. To eat rice, to consume it with discipline and without waste, was to embody the values of the samurai, to uphold the tenets of a society that prized endurance, frugality, and strength. You would feel the weight of this cultural significance with every mouthful, understanding that the grain on your plate was woven into the very fabric of who you were. Indeed, the samurai life wasn't for the faint of heart, nor for the small of stomach. It required a physical fortitude, an unwavering resolve, and indeed, the robust appetite of a warrior. Your ability to consume and process these massive portions of rice was a silent declaration of your readiness, your capacity to endure, and your unwavering commitment to the demands of your station. It was a life where the plate was a mirror, reflecting the unwavering spirit and formidable constitution required to navigate the challenges of Edo, Japan. As the quiet twilight descended upon Edo, bringing with it the cool embrace of evening, the final meal of the day typically offered a gentle respite, a lighter, more easily digestible conclusion to the robust, carb-heavy sustenance of breakfast and lunch. You'd find that evening meals for the commoner often gravitated towards dishes like ochazuke, or a simple rice porridge. These preparations offered warmth and comfort, a soothing balm after a day of physical exertion, without the overwhelming bulk of the earlier meals. Ochazuke, in particular, presents itself as a fascinating example of culinary evolution. Picture a bowl of plain, usually cold, rice. Over this, a warm, fragrant tea is poured, creating a comforting, savory broth. Toppings, chosen for their flavor and textural contrast, are then added, transforming the simple rice and tea into a more substantial and satisfying dish. Originally, ochazuke was a dish associated with the upper classes. Tea, especially high-quality tea, was considered a luxury, a symbol of refinement and status. To combine it with rice in this manner was an indulgence, a subtle display of taste and means. However, as the Edo period progressed and the economy flourished, tea became more accessible, its gentle aroma and soothing properties spreading throughout society. With this democratization of tea, ochazuke naturally followed, moving from the exclusive tables of the elite to the more humble abodes of commoners. You would observe Edo merchants, always keen on innovation and convenience, playing a significant role in popularizing ochazuke even further. They saw its potential as a kind of fast food, a quick, warm, and satisfying meal that could be prepared with minimal fuss, perfect for busy travelers, late-night workers, or anyone seeking a simple yet comforting supper. The beauty of ochazuke lay in its versatility, its ability to be customized with an array of simple yet flavorful toppings. You might choose to add delicate slices of pickled plums, their tangy sharpness cutting through the richness of the tea, or perhaps a sprinkling of tsukemono, other pickled vegetables, to add a refreshing crunch. For a subtle hint of spice, a tiny dab of wasabi could be swirled into the warm liquid, awakening the senses. Dried seaweed, nori, crumbled or in strips, would add a delicate umami and a pleasant texture. Each addition transformed the basic rice and tea into a personalized culinary experience, a quiet pleasure at the end of a long day. Ultimately, ochazuke provided a warm, soothing comfort, a gentle culinary embrace as the night deepened. Its liquid base made it considerably easier to digest than the enormous, solid bowls of rice consumed earlier in the day. You would feel a sense of lightness, a pleasant warmth spreading through your body, a quiet satisfaction that prepared you for a restful night's sleep. It was a simple, yet profound, act of nourishment, a testament to the wisdom of a culture that understood the importance of a gentle conclusion to the day, allowing the body and spirit to unwind in peaceful anticipation of the new dawn. While ochazuke had by the evening become a common and comforting meal for many, there existed, even within this humble dish, an extraordinary expression of luxury and extravagance. You would hear whispers, perhaps, of the legendary ochazuke offered at yaozen, a high-class restaurant renowned in Edo for its exquisite and remarkably expensive cuisine. This wasn't merely a meal. It was an experience, a statement of unparalleled wealth and discerning taste. To illustrate its incredible cost, imagine this: an ochazuke from Yaozen, translated into today's currency, would set you back an astonishing sum. Approximately $1,400, that's not a typo. $1,400 for a bowl of rice and tea. It prompts a fascinating question. What ingredients could possibly justify such a price tag? The answer, as you might expect, lay in the meticulous sourcing of the rarest and finest components. The tea itself would be of an unparalleled grade, perhaps a specific, shade-grown varietal, hand-picked from the most revered gardens, its leaves handled with utmost care. The water used would not be just any water. It would be sourced from a pristine spring, known for its exceptional purity and mineral balance, perhaps even transported from a great distance. And then, the toppings. These weren't the common pickles found at market stalls. They would be exotic gourds, cultivated with immense difficulty, perhaps from distant provinces, their flavors unique and their textures sublime. Every ingredient was chosen for its absolute scarcity, its perfect quality, and the sheer effort involved in its acquisition. Each element was a whisper of exclusivity, a testament to the lengths one would go to for the ultimate culinary experience. Out of curiosity and a desire to understand the essence of such a fabled dish, you might imagine attempting to recreate a more accessible, yet still refined, version of this high-class ochazuke. You would begin with meticulously chosen components: crisp, takuan, pickled radish, its golden hue promising a delightful crunch; narazuke, a deeply flavorful pickle made from melon or gourd, preserved in sake leaves, offering a complex, fermented sweetness; thin slices of refreshing cucumber for a cool contrast; finely minced ginger for a gentle warmth; and a scattering of toasted sesame seeds for a nutty aroma and subtle texture. For the liquid, instead of plain tea, you might elevate the experience with a light, aromatic dashi, perhaps infused with a delicate soy sauce, creating a savory depth that perfectly complements the rice. This would be poured gently over your carefully arranged toppings and rice, its steam carrying the harmonious scents of the individual ingredients. Finally, for that touch of refined spice, a tiny fresh dollop of wasabi would be added, ready to be dissolved into the warm broth, lending a sharp, clean heat that awakens the palate. As you take your first sip, your first delicate taste of this homemade luxury, ochazuke, you would find it undeniably tasty. The flavors are balanced, the textures delightful, and the warmth exquisitely comforting. It is a wonderfully satisfying dish, a testament to the simple elegance of Japanese cuisine. Yet, even with these carefully selected, high-quality ingredients, you would inevitably arrive at a clear conclusion: delicious as it is, it is simply not worth its $1,400 price tag. The true value of the Yaozen ochazuke lay not just in its taste, but in its narrative, its exclusivity, and the sheer audacity of its cost, a legendary tale of Edo's most opulent culinary indulgence. As our quiet journey through the culinary landscape of Edo, Japan, draws to a gentle close, you are left with a deeper understanding, a more nuanced appreciation for the life lived in those distant times. The Edo diet, which we've explored in detail, was unequivocally high-carb and remarkably low-protein by your modern standards. Yet, despite this seeming imbalance, you would observe a society populated by strong, lean, and tirelessly energetic individuals. Their bodies were perfectly adapted to their lifestyle, sustained by the very fuel they cultivated and consumed with such discipline. It's a testament to the human body's incredible capacity for adaptation and the effectiveness of a diet tailored to its specific needs. At the very heart of this diet, and indeed, at the core of Edo society itself, stood rice. More than just a grain. Rice represented a multitude of things. It was a clear marker of status, the gleaming white grains speaking volumes about one's standing. It was the fundamental ingredient for survival, ensuring the sustained energy needed for daily labor. And it was an undeniable source of strength, physically and culturally, binding people to their land and traditions. You would feel, in every description of a rice mountain, the profound weight of its significance. The act of eating, as we've seen, was far more than mere nourishment. It was a daily lesson in discipline and endurance. The sheer volume of food, the hours spent consuming it, the cultural imperative to finish every grain. All these elements reveal a society that prized fortitude and unwavering commitment. You would sense the quiet resolve embedded in each meal, a reflection of the samurai spirit that permeated the entire culture, even down to the commoner's plate. It was a constant, tangible reinforcement of their values, a daily practice in perseverance. Your modern stomach, accustomed to smaller, more varied meals, might struggle to comprehend, let alone replicate, the sheer resilience of Edo stomachs, the capacity to consume and process such colossal quantities of rice, day in and day out, speaks to a different physical reality, a strength forged through generations of consistent practice and necessity. You would understand that the digestive fortitude of the Edo Japanese was as much a product of their environment and lifestyle as their muscular strength or mental resilience. And so, as you reflect on these lessons from Edo meals, a final, profound truth gently settles upon you. Food, in that era, wasn't just about eating. It was a way of life. It shaped routines, defined social standing, reflected economic realities, and reinforced cultural values. It was a silent, persistent thread woven through every aspect of existence, from the first light of dawn to the quiet of evening. The meals of the Edo period tell a story not just of sustenance, but of character, resilience, and a deep, abiding connection to the simple, yet powerful, gifts of the earth. Let these quiet insights drift with you now. As the gentle night deepens around us, may your own journey continue into restful slumber, perhaps dreaming of distant lands and ancient meals, carried by the slow, flowing rhythm of history. Good night, and may peace find you.